Welcome to one of the most disturbing cases of religious resistance ever documented in Charleston, South Carolina. Before we begin, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact time you're listening to this narration. We're interested in knowing which places and times of day or night these documented accounts reach. At precisely 3:17 in the morning on August 17, 1843, Sheriff William Thompson and 6 deputies stood at the base of the bell tower at the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, preparing to ascend 127 stone steps in pursuit of what they believed were 2 fugitive slaves. By the time they reached the top, they would discover not 2 people, but 17, along with evidence of an operation that had been running beneath the city's notice for years. And standing calmly among the hidden refugees, showing not fear but defiant serenity, was a 41-year-old Irish nun who would declare before a judge 3 days later that she answered to a higher authority than the laws of South Carolina. Charleston in 1843 existed as a city of profound contradictions. Its elegant architecture and refined culture masked an economy built entirely on the labor of enslaved people. Its churches, standing as monuments to Christian faith on nearly every corner, preached from pulpits purchased with profits from human bondage. And among these churches, the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist occupied a particularly precarious position. Catholics remained a small and barely tolerated minority in the overwhelmingly Protestant city, their presence accepted with suspicion and their activities monitored with vigilance by authorities who viewed Rome with the same distrust they viewed abolitionists. The cathedral itself, completed in 1821, rose from Broad Street with Gothic spires that could be seen from the harbor. According to architectural records preserved in the South Carolina Historical Society, the building featured twin bell towers flanking the main entrance, each containing 3 bronze bells cast in France and transported across the Atlantic specifically for this church. The southern tower, the taller of the 2, extended 150 feet above street level. Its interior consisted of a narrow spiral staircase winding around a central column, with small landings at intervals where bell ringers could access the ropes that controlled the massive bells above. Sister Mary Agnes Fitzgerald had arrived in Charleston in 1836. One of 6 Sisters of Mercy sent from Ireland to establish educational and charitable work among the city's Catholic population. According to records from the Sisters of Mercy archives in Dublin, examined by researchers in 2008, Mary Agnes was born in County Cork in 1802, entered religious life at 19, and volunteered specifically for the American mission despite knowing the challenges it would present. Her assignment at the cathedral included teaching in the parish school, visiting the sick, and serving as sacristan, the person responsible for the care of the church building and its liturgical furnishings. What these official duties concealed was a parallel mission that Sister Mary Agnes undertook with neither official sanction nor apparent fear of consequences. At some point between her arrival in Charleston and the summer of 1843, she transformed the cathedral's southern bell tower into a station of the Underground Railroad, a hidden refuge for those fleeing enslavement in search of freedom. How she accomplished this without detection for years speaks to both her ingenuity and the particular vulnerabilities of Charleston's system of surveillance. The bell tower was accessed through a small door in the rear of the cathedral, nominally locked but to which Sister Mary Agnes held a key as part of her sacristan duties. The tower's height and isolation meant that few people had reason to ascend it except the bell ringers who performed their duties on Sundays and holy days. Between these regular visits, the tower stood empty and unmonitored, its interior invisible from ground level, its sounds muffled by thick stone walls. According to testimony given years later by individuals who had been sheltered in the tower, documented in interviews conducted by the American Freedmen's Inquiry Commission in 1863 and preserved in the National Archives, Sister Mary Agnes had modified the tower's interior to create hiding spaces. False walls constructed from wood planks painted to match the stone-concealed narrow chambers between the staircase and the outer wall. Compartments built into the bell mechanism housings provided additional space. Blankets, water containers, and food supplies were stored in sealed boxes hidden among the ropes and pulleys. The entire operation was designed to appear, to any casual inspection, as nothing more than the ordinary infrastructure of a church bell tower. The system by which fugitives reached the tower remained deliberately obscure even to those who used it. Most accounts describe being brought to the cathedral after dark, entering through the cemetery gate rather than the main entrance, and being guided up the tower stairs by someone they knew only as a woman who spoke with an accent and wore religious clothing. Sister Mary Agnes apparently never used her name with those she sheltered, referring to herself only as a servant of God. This anonymity served a dual purpose: protecting her identity and reinforcing the religious nature of the sanctuary she provided. The operation required support beyond what one nun could provide alone. Food and supplies needed to be procured without arousing suspicion. Messages needed to be conveyed to others in the network about when refugees would arrive and when they could be safely moved to the next station. Money was needed to facilitate travel once fugitives left Charleston. According to later investigations, this support came from an unlikely coalition of Charleston Catholics and a handful of Protestant sympathizers who quietly funded the operation while maintaining public facades of supporting the institution of slavery. Evidence of this broader network emerged in the testimonies given at Sister Mary Agnes's trial. Prosecutors, attempting to identify accomplices, questioned witnesses about who else might have known about the tower. The answers were carefully vague, but certain names recurred: Patrick O'Brien, an Irish dockworker who had access to ships leaving Charleston Harbor; Dr. Marcus Thorne, a Catholic physician who treated patients in the parish and who might have provided medical care to those hiding in the tower; and most controversially, Catherine Wentworth, a wealthy Protestant widow whose late husband's fortune came from rice plantations but who had converted to Catholicism and become a generous benefactor of the cathedral. The network might have continued operating indefinitely had it not been for an anonymous letter delivered to Sheriff Thompson on August 15, 1843. The letter, preserved in Charleston County law enforcement records and reviewed by historians during a 2003 research project, provided specific information. 2 fugitives from a plantation in Beaufort County were being hidden in the bell tower of the Catholic cathedral and would likely be moved within the next few days. The level of detail suggested the informant had direct knowledge of the operation's workings. Sheriff Thompson, according to his own report filed with the City Council, faced a delicate situation. Raiding a church required careful consideration, particularly when that church served a minority religious community whose persecution could create broader problems for civil order. He consulted with Judge Marcus Fairfax, who reviewed the letter and authorized a search warrant. The raid was scheduled for the pre-dawn hours of August 17, when the cathedral would be empty and the surrounding streets quiet. What happened during that raid was documented by multiple sources. Sheriff Thompson's official report notes that his party entered the cathedral through the main doors, whose lock Sister Mary Agnes unlocked for them when they knocked, showing no surprise at their arrival at such an unusual hour. When informed they had a warrant to search the bell tower, she reportedly replied, "You will find what you are looking for, though perhaps not only what you are looking for," and handed Thompson a lantern before leading the way to the tower door herself. The climb up the narrow spiral staircase took nearly 10 minutes, the deputies moving cautiously in single file behind the sheriff and the nun who preceded them with her lamp held high. At the first landing, they found nothing unusual. At the second landing, approximately halfway up the tower, one deputy noticed what appeared to be a gap between the staircase and the outer wall. Investigation revealed a false wall panel that slid aside to reveal a chamber containing 5 people, 3 adults and 2 children, all African American, all wide awake despite the hour and watching the deputies with expressions of resignation rather than surprise. The third landing revealed another concealed chamber, this one containing 6 people. And at the top of the tower, in the bell chamber itself where the massive bronze bells hung above the city, deputies found 6 more people hidden among the bell mechanisms, bringing the total to 17 individuals, none of whom appeared on any list of reported fugitives currently being circulated by plantation owners. The scene that followed was described by Deputy James Whitfield in a letter to his brother, discovered in the Whitfield family papers during an estate donation to the South Carolina Historical Society in 1967. Sheriff Thompson asked Sister Mary Agnes how long these people had been in the tower. She replied that some had arrived days ago, others weeks, and that she did not track time in the manner he meant. When he asked if she understood she had broken numerous laws, she said yes, she understood the laws of South Carolina quite well, and that those laws contradicted the laws of God, which took precedence. When he asked if she would reveal the names of anyone who had assisted her, she declined, stating that she would not contribute to anyone else's prosecution for performing acts of Christian charity. All 17 refugees were taken into custody, along with Sister Mary Agnes herself. The fugitives were held pending identification and returned to their claimed owners. Sister Mary Agnes was charged with harboring fugitive slaves, a felony under South Carolina law punishable by substantial fines and potential imprisonment. The trial began on August 20, 1843, just 3 days after the raid. The courtroom was packed, according to accounts in the Charleston Mercury and the Charleston Courier. The case carried implications far beyond the fate of one nun. The Catholic community feared that harsh punishment would lead to broader persecution. Protestant leaders worried that too lenient a response would encourage further resistance to slavery laws. And abolitionists in the North, though few in Charleston itself, saw the trial as a test of whether religious conviction could justify civil disobedience. Sister Mary Agnes conducted herself throughout the proceedings with what witnesses described as preternatural calm. She did not deny the charges. When asked why she had acted as she did, her response was recorded verbatim by the court clerk. "My obedience is first to God, who makes no distinction between souls. All are equal in his sight. If the law of this land contradicts the law of God, then the law of this land stands in mortal sin, and I cannot participate in that sin. I regret only that I could not do more." The prosecution called witnesses who testified to the disruption and economic damage caused by harboring fugitives. Plantation owners whose workers had gone missing speculated that some might have passed through the cathedral. The prosecutor argued that allowing religious conviction to excuse lawbreaking would undermine all civil authority. The defense, such as it was, consisted mainly of character witnesses who attested to Sister Mary Agnes's piety and charitable work, though none could credibly deny the facts of the case. Judge Fairfax faced an impossible decision. Convicting a nun for providing sanctuary would inflame the Catholic community and potentially create a martyr whose story would fuel abolitionist sentiment. But acquitting her or imposing token punishment would signal that South Carolina's laws could be ignored by those who claimed religious objections. His solution was neither acquittal nor harsh punishment, but removal. Sister Mary Agnes was found guilty but sentenced only to immediate deportation from South Carolina, with the understanding that she would never return to the state. The sentence was carried out within days. On August 28, 1843, Sister Mary Agnes Fitzgerald departed Charleston aboard a ship bound for Philadelphia. According to passenger manifests preserved in the Philadelphia Port Authority archives, she traveled alone under her religious name, carrying only a small trunk. The Charleston Catholic community was warned that any further involvement in harboring fugitives would result in closure of the cathedral. The bell tower was locked, and access was restricted to church officials who conducted weekly inspections to ensure it remained empty. For nearly 2 centuries, this was where the story appeared to end. Sister Mary Agnes vanished from historical records after her deportation. The 17 people rescued from the tower were returned to claimed owners, their individual fates unrecorded. The operation she had run from the bell tower became a footnote in Charleston's history, occasionally mentioned in scholarly works on the Underground Railroad but lacking the documentation that would reveal its full scope. Then, in September 2011, everything changed. Hurricane Hugo had damaged the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist significantly in 1989, but full restoration had taken decades to fund and organize. When workers began renovating the southern bell tower, they discovered architectural anomalies that suggested the building's structure was more complex than existing plans indicated. Ground-penetrating radar revealed voids beneath the cathedral floor that appeared to be tunnels. Archaeological excavation confirmed what the radar had suggested. Beneath the cathedral ran a network of passages connecting the bell tower to the main church, to the sacristy, to the cemetery, and to what appeared to be an exit point in the basement of a building 2 blocks away. The tunnels were brick-lined, approximately 4 feet high, requiring anyone using them to move in a crouch. Along the walls, archaeologists discovered 47 objects: religious medals, buttons, a small carved wooden bird, a child's shoe, tools improvised from scrap metal. Each object represented a person who had passed through these passages on their journey from enslavement to freedom. Most significantly, excavation beneath the sanctuary floor, in a chamber directly below the altar dedicated to Saint Joseph, revealed a metal container sealed with wax. Inside was a leather-bound journal written in a mixture of English and Latin, its pages covered in precise handwriting. The journal belonged to Sister Mary Agnes Fitzgerald. The journal's contents, analyzed by historians at the College of Charleston and published in excerpts in the Journal of Southern History in 2013, documented an operation far more extensive than anyone had imagined. Beginning with an entry dated May 3, 1836, just weeks after her arrival in Charleston, Sister Mary Agnes recorded the name, approximate age, and origin of each person she sheltered in the bell tower. The entries continued through August 16, 1843, the day before the raid. The total number of individuals documented, 203. Each entry included not just biographical information but notes about the person's condition, medical needs, and eventual destination. Sister Mary Agnes wrote in a hybrid code, using Latin phrases mixed with English and occasional Gaelic words, perhaps to obscure meaning in case the journal was discovered. Her notations indicated that most refugees stayed in the tower between 3 and 7 days before being moved to the next station, which she referred to only as the Northern Door, likely meaning passage aboard ships leaving Charleston Harbor for northern ports. The journal also named her collaborators, though using pseudonyms or initials that historians have worked to decode. P.O. almost certainly referred to Patrick O'Brien, the dockworker. Dr. M.T. matched Dr. Marcus Thorne. C.W. corresponded to Catherine Wentworth. But other initials have resisted identification, suggesting the network included people whose involvement remained successfully hidden even from historical investigation. Most poignantly, the journal contains Sister Mary Agnes's personal reflections. In an entry dated June 12, 1839, she wrote, "Today brought me a mother with 2 small children, all 3 weak from hunger and the long journey. As I washed the feet of the youngest, barely 3 years old, I thought of our Lord washing the feet of his disciples. These are the feet that will carry her to freedom. How can any law declare such feet should be shackled? How can any government claim authority over a soul that belongs only to God?" The discovery of the journal prompted genealogists and historians to attempt matching names from Sister Mary Agnes's records with individuals who appeared in census data, church records, and other documentation from northern states and Canada. In 2019, a research team from the Avery Research Center for African American History and Culture published findings from DNA analysis. They had located descendants of 12 individuals named in the journal, families living in Ontario, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania who retained oral histories of ancestors escaping slavery through Charleston with help from an Irish nun at a Catholic cathedral. One such descendant, Marcus Freeman of Toronto, shared family letters dating to the 1880s in which his great-great-grandmother described being hidden in a bell tower as a child in 1841, protected by a woman she called the Angel in Black who promised God would keep her safe. DNA evidence confirmed that Marcus's ancestor was indeed one of the children listed in Sister Mary Agnes's journal entry from April 15, 1841. The final mystery of Sister Mary Agnes Fitzgerald's own fate was resolved in 2016 through the persistence of researchers at the Archdiocese of Charleston who contacted counterparts in Quebec. Records from the Sisters of Mercy Convent in Montreal revealed that Sister Mary Agnes had not remained in Philadelphia after her deportation but had been quietly transferred to Canada. The Canadian convent received her under the name Sister Mercy of the Sacred Heart, apparently an assumed name to protect her from potential extradition attempts. She lived in Montreal from 1843 until her death on November 7, 1881, at 79 years of age. Convent records indicate she taught in the order school, served as novice mistress training young nuns, and never spoke publicly of her time in Charleston. A brief obituary in the convent's annals noted only that she was known for her devotion to works of mercy and her particular concern for the poor and oppressed. She was buried in the convent cemetery under her assumed name, her true identity unknown even to most of her fellow sisters. The bell tower at the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist was reopened to limited access following the 2011 restoration. The tunnels beneath the cathedral were preserved as historical features, with sections accessible through guided tours that began in 2015. Museum exhibits in the cathedral basement display objects found during excavation and excerpts from Sister Mary Agnes's journal. The story of the tower as an underground railroad station has been incorporated into Charleston's historical narrative, though it remains less widely known than other aspects of the city's past. But it is the bells themselves that have generated the most attention and the most controversy. According to multiple witnesses, including cathedral staff, neighbors, and police officers who have investigated noise complaints. The three bells in the southern tower ring spontaneously each year on August 17 at precisely 3:17 in the morning, the exact date and time of the 1843 raid. The phenomenon has been documented with audio recordings and seismic sensors that confirm the bells do move and do produce sound, but no mechanism for this movement has been identified. Campanologists, specialists in the study of bells, have examined the tower multiple times. Dr. Elena Vasquez of Boston College, who conducted an investigation in 2017, confirmed in her published report that no mechanical system, no wind patterns, no structural settling, and no electromagnetic interference could explain the bell's annual ringing. The pattern of the ringing is particularly inexplicable, not the random clanging that might result from vibration or structural movement, but a specific sequence that repeats for approximately 3 minutes before stopping. In 2018, a team of researchers including historians and musicologists analyzed recordings of the bell sequence. What they discovered was reported in the Journal of American Folklore. The pattern of rings corresponds to an early form of auditory code that predates Morse code but operates on similar principles of long and short intervals. When decoded, the sequence spells out a single word, repeated over and over, FREEDOM. The story of Sister Mary Agnes Fitzgerald and the Bell Tower Refuge challenges comfortable narratives about religion's role in antebellum South. While many churches provided theological justifications for slavery, at least one nun within the Catholic Church in Charleston chose to interpret her faith as requiring active resistance to that institution. Her choice cost her the ability to remain in Charleston, but it saved hundreds of lives. Her carefully documented records ensure that those lives are not forgotten, that names are preserved, that the reality of their suffering and their courage remains part of history. The tunnels beneath the cathedral, now open to public view, serve as physical testimony to the lengths people went to in seeking freedom and in helping others find it. The journal, its pages now digitized and available to researchers worldwide, stands as evidence of one woman's determination to live according to her conscience regardless of legal consequences. And the bells that ring each August morning without human intervention remind us that some stories refuse to remain silent, that testimony persists across centuries, and that the echoes of those who sought freedom continue to sound. In the pre-dawn hours of every August 17th, when the bells of St. John the Baptist begin their inexplicable ringing, a small group of descendants, historians, and curious witnesses gather in the street below the tower. They stand in darkness, listening to the pattern that spells freedom over and over, bearing witness to a phenomenon that science cannot explain but that history validates. The bells ring for Sister Mary Agnes, who chose conscience over compliance. They ring for the 203 souls she sheltered, whose names are now known and remembered. And they ring for all those whose journeys through the tower went undocumented, whose names are lost, but whose lives were nevertheless transformed by the dangerous mercy of one Irish nun who believed that God's law superseded all others. The sound carries across Charleston's historic district, past elegant homes built with profits from bondage, past churches that preached submission, past the harbor where ships once brought enslaved people in chains and later carried fugitives to freedom. It rings out over a city that has slowly, painfully learned to acknowledge its complex past. And it continues, year after year, the same pattern, the same message, the same testimony spelled out in bronze and echoing through the humid South Carolina night. Freedom, freedom, freedom.